Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first edition of Mad Hatter Musings. I'm here with a very special friend, a gentleman I've known for, I think, going on at least 15 years. Uh, with this increasing environment of uncertainty, I thought of no one better to talk to than Ken Kanara. Ken is someone I call a deep friend, but he is a managing partner at ECA Partners, executive talent for the top 1% of executives in private equity and corporate strategy. So if you have big, ambiguous problems that don't really fit one place, but you really want to solve, he's the guy you want to call. So Ken, just thanks for joining, and I hope I did you at least some justice there.
Ari, you did me more justice than I deserve. Thanks so much for having me.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Just wanted to quickly check in. Look, we've both navigated definitely good times and bad times, and we're seeing significant uncertainty. I wanted to get your thoughts first of all on how is this affecting the job market, and particularly where are you seeing the pockets of opportunity shift?
So, when you talk about uncertainty, I think there's really kind of two things that matter from a CEO's perspective. So, we do a lot of work with CEOs of private equity portfolio companies, and they're essentially thinking about two things, and then I'll touch on how that impacts the job market. But usually, what they're thinking about, the two most important things are going to be one is managing cash, and then two is ensuring that they're hitting revenue targets. Now, there's obviously loads of other things that are on their mind and they're thinking about, but I'd say these are the two most important. And then how we're seeing this flow through with our business in terms of retained executive search, I would say there's really two common functions that are being impacted right now. The first would be sales or commercial excellence. So a lot of CEOs that were typically in, call it acquisition mode 18, 24 months ago, executing different value creation plans where inorganic growth was a key part of that, have shifted their focus to sales and commercial roles. And so we've seen more sales and commercial roles in the past 3, 6 months than I've ever seen at my time at ECA. And then the other, if I tie back to what I was talking about earlier in terms of managing cash, we're seeing a lot on the finance front. So everything from controllers, FP&A leaders, as well as maybe potentially either enhancing, upgrading, or changing out their CFO.
And Ken, just talking about, when typically when you mentioned you talked about 3 to 6 months, which of course is a longer period, much longer than what we're currently seeing, even 3 to 6 weeks out in the
Yeah.
past 6 weeks as uncertainty. What has contributed? What do you think is what is driving this change especially when you said 3 to 6 months ago? What drove this change? What changed in that?
Well, yeah, there's been a lot of macro factors that have been going on in private equity that I'll talk about. So the first is we have unprecedented levels of dry powder. This isn't going to be news to anybody. The second is that valuations really aren't softening as much as many had hoped for. And then the third thing is just that hold periods have extended significantly. So I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but if you just take any given portfolio company at any given fund, whether that be low mid-market or mid-market private equity, we're essentially talking about a year plus longer hold period. And where we could typically just rely on kind of buy, build, and flip, we're having to look for other areas to grow the business.
I want to sort of drill down into some of the things you talked about, which is particularly given what you're saying is the sort of reduced emphasis on new inorganic growth and shift towards organic ways of growth. And
Mhm.
in this sort of environment, how are CEOs approaching bold initiatives that are historic, that are difficult to execute during uncertain times? Things like new market entry, transformations, new product initiatives, or new revenue models.
Yeah, which is funny, Hari, because this is really the antithesis of our conversation that got this whole thing started. I, I would describe it as a start-stop mindset, right? So what do I mean? if you look at our interim and on-demand consulting business, right, that essentially allows CEOs to tap into execs like yourself and former consultants from McKinsey, Bain, BCG, or even pricing experts from Simon Kucher, that sort of thing. I would say this business has been more active than ever in terms of new project requests and starts. But at the same time, and now I'm getting into, I would say, more the near-term uncertainty around tariffs and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
While they're looking at these initiatives, exploring them, bringing them almost to fruition, then comes the stop because they're holding off on actually hitting the green button. And I think what'll happen is as things in the market sort of clarify, especially around the tariff situation, I think we're going to start to see those projects really start to kind of take shape.
That's an interesting take. In the absence, though, considering, I mean, and we at least have, we know that we're at least in for at least a month more of lack of clarity at a minimum.
Yes.
What do you think CEOs are currently doing? And a month is a significant time when you're looking at a 3-month, quarterly earnings period. That's a third of that at least. And it's of course reasonable. What are the best ways to mitigate some of that uncertainty? What are they doing instead?
Yeah, this sort of goes back to a little bit of your question earlier around kind of pockets of opportunity. So, in addition to sales excellence, financial discipline, that sort of thing, I would say smart CEOs are really investing in business intelligence. And this is across low mid-market as well as mid-market private equity portfolio companies. So, for example, there's a company called Quantigy Analytics. And essentially what they do is they walk into a private equity portfolio company, they wrangle all the data, they centralize it, and then they develop custom real-time dashboards allowing both operators and investors to see financial and operational KPIs in real time, and that's helping them navigate their business better. And I think that's just one example of something folks can do in the short term to kind of realize efficiencies, that sort of thing. Now, again, I realize this goes a little bit in the face of what I was talking about in terms of new initiatives, because there is still some kind of overall hesitancy around starting an endeavor like that.
But what you are saying is, look, it's sort of there's a significant importance of digital in investing in new capabilities that, of course, will create an engine for you when the time comes.
That's exactly right.
And on that, that's a great example, by the way. And I did want to sort of good segue into our sort of maybe closing question, which is, and as a result, what do you think is the market missing in terms of talent when they approach these problems a certain way? What do you think the market should be thinking about instead or better?
I think my answer might be a little bit boring, but I'll tie it to a compliment about you, Hari. But look, I would say in a world where information and data is quickly becoming democratized through AI, right? We can type anything we want into Google, we can type anything that we want into Perplexity or any of these kind of Gen AI tools. Information is no longer the barrier, right? It's no longer the bottleneck. And so now what I like to think of as like being the key skill, and what investors are really looking for is true operators. And these are people that can actually drive and execute initiatives, change. And the reason that I say this is, look, we deal with a lot of really smart folks from, I mentioned earlier, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, folks with degrees from Harvard. But at the end of the day, if you're not able to drive and execute what needs to be done for the business, it's really meaningless. It's just an academic trophy. And then I would kind of break that down into four things, at least that I see as the most common themes around the folks that we place that have immense success. Number one is just overall table stakes intelligence, right? So they're smart enough. These are smart people, but you don't have to be a brainiac or off the chart smart. Number two is they have some sort of unfair competitive advantage in a particular niche market, right? So if I think about you, right, it's AI, it's mobility, right, like those sorts of things. You have an unfair advantage. Number three is they're effective communicators. We talked earlier about driving change. And then number four, again, I know it's a boring answer, but I would say is grit. They're willing to actually do the hard work and drive things forward.
Very well put, Ken. Maybe to summarize the entire conversation, I'd say when information and intelligence are table stakes, operational ability and sheer ability to execute in these uncertain times becomes your competitive advantage. And I
I
want to
think
thank
that's
you, Ken, for
absolutely
these very profound thoughts. And yeah, we'll, of course, hoping to continue our amazing relationship.
awesome. Sorry, I didn't mean to